Afternoon. We have a very exciting meeting for you today, so welcome to our celebration of service for September 19th. I'm Ron Barnes, and it's an honor to be your president. The thought for the day. People often say that motivation doesn't last. Well, neither does bathing. So that's why I recommend it daily. Zig Ziglar. So we'll think about our motivation and our bath at the same time, or shower. And we have a reflection today with Judy Schroeder, who's working her way up here right now. Judy?
Hello. At a medical facility this morning, I saw consummate Rotary volunteer Art Omick. Art says everything's falling apart all at once. He greets you and he asks for your thoughts and prayers. My reflection today is very personal. When I was 22 years old, one of my professors, man considerably older, a widower with 2 children, asked me to marry him. That's how, 4 days after my 23rd birthday, I became the mother of a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. Less than a month later, the 4 of us left for 7 months living with his parents in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'd never been outside the United States before. Because my husband would not speak about the past, the story I'm going to tell you comes from his parents-in-law, what I learned then. My father-in-law was a secular Jew. In the 30s, he was married to an Aryan. In the 30s, as Nazism became ever more insidious, they talked about immigrating. Some of his family did to Argentina, Australia, America. But they decided, no, they were steeped in German culture. This was their country. He was a respected attorney. His family had lived in this university town of Breslau for generations. By the time they changed their mind, it was too late to get out. And my father-in-law had to watch helplessly as his family was transported to Auschwitz. What of his children? Well, they had only 2 Jewish grandparents, so they were considered Mischlinge, mixture. Instead of a concentration camp, they were sent to forced labor. The older son in Western Germany, my future husband, repairing railroad lines as the Allies bombed them in occupied France. As the war drew to a close, my parents-in-law, seeing the Soviets advancing, made their way with hundreds of thousands of others further west, eventually ending in Wiesbaden. For some minor infraction, my children's uncle was sent just weeks before war's end to Buchenwald, where he died days before Eisenhower's troop liberated that facility. My husband was able, with some of his buddies, to escape, where they encountered French partisans who were going to shoot them until one of the buddies, fluent in French, explained the situation. So they were sent instead to a French POW camp. After their arrival in Wiesbaden, my father-in-law became Wiedergutmachungsdirektor, reparations director for the province of Hesse. His job was his clients were people whose goods had been confiscated by the Nazis. And they were all over the world in countries I'd never even heard of. By the time I met him, he was retired, but still some people would come and we'd sit around the living room table, having coffee and pastries. And they talk about their life experiences. One man even rolled up his sleeve to show me the tattoo, his concentration number on his arm. I'd grown up in a Christian nationalist home, proud of its German heritage. And suddenly, I saw what hate, lies, anger, resentment, prejudice how they can subvert a nation. Today is the midpoint between the two holiest of Jewish holidays, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And it's a day when I would like you to join me in repudiating any and all autocracies and dictatorships. They are dangerous to humanity. Thank you.
Judy, I think you just personalized history for all of us. A lot of times we read about these things, but didn't feel it in the heart. You brought it to our hearts today. Thank you very much. To introduce our guests, we have Charlotte Zitlow, who will introduce guests. Charlotte? I'm not sure it's coming through.
Test, there we go. Okay. All right, good. Can you hear me now? All right. We're very fortunate. We have several guests from Venezuela here today. They're guests of Sandy Keller and let's see, you read them. Yeah, just.
Okay, Flory Casanova and Flor Casanova.
Susan is here. Husband of friend who works at Boston Scientific. And so they're here for the long haul. Like her mother is here to visit. So welcome them from Venezuela, please. Going down your line. I can't read. Yeah, right.
Okay, Stacia Biggs is here with Liz Vale. Stacia, can you stand, please?
Yeah. Kevin Burris is here from Rotaract. Welcome. Are you related to the Burrises on the radio? Okay, just checking. I like them, yeah. David Wright with Roseanne Levy. Did he come down from Chicago? Yes, he did. Dale Ellifritz with Dick McCabe and Kathy. This is with a little help from my friends. And we all, of course, Mary Beth McCaig. Nice, good to see you all. They're sometimes in Arizona, but it got too warm there. Ramondo Reyes at our door. He's a student at IU. And it turns out he was a student of Trent Deckard. Amazing. This is a small world, and we're lucky to be in it. And so I want to welcome everybody. Is there one more? Robert Wolford. with Wendell's. That must be your grandson, Wendell, right? Is it? This is the most guests we've had for a long time. Too bad you got somebody who couldn't read. Anyway, welcome everybody to our club. We're really happy to see you. Thank you.
Can't hear.
Joy, do we have guests online?
Ah, now we hear you. No, we don't have any guests, but I'm going to take my 15 seconds of online time to thank Judy Schroeder for her very deeply heartfelt reflection and to wish any members and guests Happy New Year and Lashana Tova.
Thank you, Joy. In case you didn't see this in the HT, and thanks to Jim Bright, this article about our Rotary Toast was well displayed on the front page. And Jeff Richardson bought 10 copies, which is probably going to keep the HT in business for another week. But thank you again, Jim, for your help on this, and Jeff for bringing it, and to the HT for noting our great celebration on November 3rd. There's still tickets available. We're almost sold out. So if you'd like to have a great dinner and a great way to honor Judge Gavin, please sign up ASAP. Rumor has it we have some birthdays. Tim Thrasher, September 19th. Brian Price, September 20th. And we have some club anniversaries. Ben Pearson, 2 years. Cindy Neathart, 3 years. And CM Morrison, 4 years. So welcome to Rotary for your short tenure, and we hope you stay many years. Again, it's great to see such a crowd in the Frangipani room today. A lot of guests, but also a lot of Rotarians here FaceTiming. I do want to also apologize to Art Levy. He was at the district training session a week ago Saturday, and I failed to mention Artie's name when I mentioned the others. So I didn't want to leave him out, and I wanted you to know that district training is very important to all of us. And I appreciate Artie as a fairly new member taking time to learn more about Rotary. And I think one of the things that will be coming in the next month or so for all new Rotarians, what I call a fireside chat. This is something I will work with the membership committee to be able to sit down with our new members and anybody else that wants to join us and talk about Rotary's story. Now it's time for Happy Dollars. Who's happy today?
I am happy.
Very happy.
Woo! I am happy that I'm in a club with a reasonable amount of diversity, but with big-hearted people like Judy who speak truth to power.
I'm happy to have my guest Stacia with the chamber here with me today.
Thanks, Liz.
I have 20 happy dollars. Happy to have our friends, the Elephants, with us. And at this table, we have 2 former Latin teachers. That is rare enough to almost be a unicorn experience. So.
Thanks, Dick.
Do we have any online, Joy?
Sally Gaskill, yes.
Thank you, Joy. I'm very happy. I'm here on Zoom, and I'm thrilled that we have that as an option. I'm about to get on a jet plane to go to Kansas City, where I may be seeing a Major League Baseball game tomorrow of the worst team in all of baseball, the Kansas City Royals. So yay, go Royals.
That's a fan.
I'm happy because I made reservations to fly to San Antonio for my son, who's retired as a colonel in the Air Force in December. I'm real proud of him.
Steve, thank him for his service.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Happy dollars, $10, because I want to welcome my guest, David, who is a terrific puppeteer. And I'd love to see him perform maybe here at one of the meetings. So $10 goes for happy dollars.
Thank you.
I am happy today because as a result of a generous gift from Tracy Jovanovic, Jawahir and Amna, two of our Afghan guests, are going to go to their second straight men's soccer game. And they loved it on Friday, and they're going to love it tonight when IU plays Butler. They are so excited, something they could never have done in Afghanistan even before the Taliban, go to a men's soccer game. Of course, they don't know what's really happening, but they do. But they're having fun.
Just get him to score a goal, would you?
Thank you, Dave.
I have $5 happy dollars on account, Natalie, for my wonderful wife, Martha. And this weekend we visited my 3 sons in Chicago, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful thing to do.
Thank you, Aaron. Now, to introduce our program, oh, one more, I'm sorry, Charlotte.
I can say this without reading it. I'm 20 happy dollars to celebrate the Jewish New Year and also to celebrate the fact that some good news was in the paper yesterday when the 5 Iranians were released and the 5 Americans came home. That's good news, and it's related entirely closely to what Judy talking about.
Thank you, Charlotte. And now to introduce our program, Connie Shakalis. Connie?
Thank you, President Ron. Charles Pearce. I met Charles a few months ago during a board meeting for the Arts Alliance of Greater Bloomington. As you will find in a few minutes, he is a content marketer and digital artist. I asked him to help me with something I was working on, and he said, I love helping people with this stuff. Ask me anything, anytime. So we will test him. Get your questions ready and see if this man is true to his word. In marketing, good content energizes its audience. It's not advertising. It's advertising's grandchild. It's new. And we all know what music videos are. From music videos to content marketing comes entrepreneur Charles Pearce. A few years ago, he started a creative fulfillment agency, he'll tell you what that is, in his home studio. He had a remote team of freelance production experts delivering work for clients across the country. He moved back to Bloomington, which is where he's from. And by the way, he's been in Austin and Chicago between Bloomington and Bloomington. He moved back here in 2021, and his boutique business has evolved into creative consulting services. Get your marketing questions ready. Here comes Charles Pearce.
Well, thank you for the introduction. Thanks for having me here. This is, I'm really excited and a little bit nervous about being here because this is not a conversation that I typically have as like a structured speech. So I'm excited to talk about it, but a little bit nervous in figuring out the speech part. Usually I'm having a couple beers with friends and talking about these subjects. So I appreciate the chance to crystallize everything. Later, but yes. So what do I do? That's a really good question because I don't always have a good answer for that. Sometimes I feel like I'm an artist who happens to work in advertising, and sometimes I feel like I'm just an advertiser that kind of has a love for the arts. It's not really like a job identity to me. It's a series of skills that I've accumulated and those skills apply in a lot of different ways. That's why I talk about content fulfillment versus saying I do banner ads or I do advertising commercials, because after a certain point, the frameworks and the knowledge is applicable in many different spaces. And I came to that by having a love for many different things. You know, my first loves were theater and film. And right now I'm big into 3D animation and motion graphic design. They're really different structures, but they all kind of help tell emotion-driven stories. And I think that's at the heart of it, is what you might call delivery systems for storytelling. And these passions have led to skills in production and content development, which has opened a lot of doors for me over the past decade. That means I've been on a lot of amazing teams. I've led a couple amazing teams. I've been an individual creator for a long time, and I've also been an individual vendor creator that's hired alongside multiple vendors that work for a larger client. So it gives me an opportunity and a privilege to see a lot of different businesses and how they think and act regarding their advertising and their marketing content, which to me really boils down to thinking about storytelling with purpose, rather than just storytelling for the fun of it or sharing something with friends and family. We have a commercial agenda behind the story that we're telling. And that means that I've frequently seen the difference maker between successful and unsuccessful businesses as well. Not every place that I've worked has been a winning organization. Sometimes you work for places that don't last. And for me, and the point of view that I've come from, the difference between successful businesses and unsuccessful businesses, the threshold that I come in, it's really whether or not creative skills are being taken advantage of or creative skills are being ignored. To kind of make sense of that, we can think about that we exist inside of an experience-centric economy. When we understand and we love shopping, we see access to goods and services in ways that elevate our quality of life. And we have lots of opportunities for anything that we are interested in. We're just soaked in choice. And that means that when there's a coffee shop in every single corner and there's different ketchup or paper towels in our grocery stores, we start to wonder what's the difference. Like, really, what is the big difference between like a Marathon and a Shell station? It's just gas, and it's hard to see that until we start to account for the experience that comes with it. We might be making a difference on the grocery store or the gas station that we go to, not necessarily because of a raw cost benefit relationship, but maybe one place deals with their service better, or it's a more inviting environment to be in. Or like with a gas station, maybe they're just better staffed, and it means that when you get in and out, it's a less stressful experience. Coffee shops, it really boils down to not really necessarily the price of the cup of coffee, so much as what's that beverage experience that you're going to have. Are you in and out because you're a fast-paced person, or are you going to be there for a long time and sit down with your friends and have a long, thoughtful conversation? And that kind of is how I think about when do businesses succeed or fail with creativity. It's a filter for organizations. One's young businesses that can't get past their belief that their product is filling a need. The literalism of my app solves a problem, or my service costs a cost percentile more than the competitor. That's data-driven, it's raw, it's not really inaccurate, but it's a fairly narrow appeal to an audience. You're really only talking to people that have an equivalent sense of consideration, the other person that is just as data-driven as that assumption. And if that works for your business, if that works for your audience and you can thrive and grow, great, you're done. But for a lot of people or a lot of organizations, that's not enough. You need to move towards a mass appeal. You need to be able to bring in a lot more people, and you need to do it relatively quickly for a business. And that's not clinical logic. That's not the world of technicians and engineers. It's not just the point of view of the founder themselves. It's emotion, it's energy, it's clever tactics. It's capturing attention and knowing that a customer or a consumer is not always going to be logic driven, but they're going to be emotion driven. And they're going to make irrational choices about their shopping. You need to stop them in their tracks with a compelling reason to engage. And you need to do that relatively quickly, and you need to focus them on spending money, because we're not in it for fun. This is commerce, this is business. So we are thinking in terms of getting people to open their wallets. And that's where applied arts is really effective, because that's distilling emotional intent into commercial media. and that commercial media is compelling people through purpose to open wallets. Storytelling delivery systems, specifically stories that address professional pain points. You know, my business needs something. I need an experience that unlocks something further for my organization, highlights value, or just being fun and clever enough that sometimes people stop long enough to check it out. There's a water company right now called Liquid Death. And I think that this is a great example of just being really novel. You know, water called Liquid Death is quite surprising and unexpected. For a lot of people, that alone gets them to stop quickly and pay attention and process more about what's going on. So applied arts and sales, in my mind, are one and the same thing because both are a process of creating a business-motivated change in the emotional state of others. You know, and it's also a competitive advantage in a crowded marketplace. Businesses that thrive invest in their communication. Businesses that are memorable invest in their aesthetics. And brands that endure appeal to the human connection. And businesses that don't are the ones that are drowned out by the ones that do. So why do businesses skip creativity then? You know, if it's so important, why is it absent from some and not in others? You know, I often think it seems on the surface to be poor assumptions about return on investment. You know, how does the creative staff person make me money? Where's this person's salary going to go for increasing revenue? And that's a fun thing that I've spent time looking into. My data is a little bit old, but at the same time, typically every dollar invested in digital advertising gives you 4 back in return, which is pretty good. And then if you expand that into multi-channel marketing, which is multiple different pieces of content on multiple different platforms, so graphics versus video versus a radio spot versus a television, when all of that comes together into multi-channel marketing, usually you see an additional third increase on your performance, about 33% additional return. So it pays for itself. So, you know, again, why? I think it's a trust issue, honestly. A piece of leadership within the organization, you know, maybe that's one person, that's maybe many people. They're not ready to let somebody else run with the brand. They're not ready for somebody else to reinvent what the organization is. You know, and sometimes that's delegation challenges. Sometimes that's an ego challenge, but that barrier of trust will be in place that limits the ability to acknowledge that what a customer might love about an organization or a business or a brand is not necessarily the same thing as that initial proposition that the business puts into the marketplace. So there's this difference that can happen. And a smart creative team, they're going to go in there and they're going to do audience research. They're going to talk to people. They're going to figure out exactly why somebody else loves the brand. Excuse me. So that research is then synthesized into marketing collateral and an advertising strategy. And if the creative team is good, they put it together with some novelty and some whimsy, so it's kind of fun and easy to capture attention. And if those results look different from what stakeholders or leadership expects, if that changes the proposition of the value of the brand by saying, hey, you know, we're in the market for this reason, but people love us for this over here, that's a disconnect where fear steps in. And a lot of time leadership is going to hold back and go, that's not why we want to be here today. That's not what we're trying to do to connect to people. And then it stalls and that organization falls down. But for leadership that's ready, you know, you're learning something new about your brand. You're learning something new about your customer. And if you execute an advertising campaign validated by customer emotion, you're now starting to reach into that mass appeal, and companies will attract more fans, you'll open more wallets, and you'll move ahead of your competitors. So when you establish an interesting brand voice, people will remember. And remembering something is a huge part of advertising. You know, in some of the kind of commercial work that I do, it boils down to in a grocery store, is somebody's hand going to do this or this when they're looking at 2 different choices on a shelf? Affecting somebody's memory and likability for a product is enormous in getting them past all the micro hurdles of actually spending money. So the inflection between a startup thesis, a young business that's kind of running on investment money and figuring themselves out, and a durable business has a lot to do with recognizing that the organization is bigger than the individuals. It's bigger than the assumptions that the founders have about the brand. And it's about creating organic loyalty in the customers, in the consumer base, to want to come back over and over and over again. And that's what you need creative experts for. Art and creativity will speak loudly in crowded markets. Great advertising sticks with us. We remember jingles from years ago in the back of our head. You know, and some of them are kind of lame, but at the same time, they're doing their job to be memorable. The best ads are creative, they're entertaining, and they're novel. It drives business, creates sales. You know, and almost done. But you know, from my point of view, I'd say I'm like the proverbial hammer. I'm seeing everything as the nail. Like, I live in this end of business. So I'm always seeing the barrier between successful business and not successful business being in this creative space. I know there's more factors than just that. But if you have an organization that isn't ready to trust that creative mindset, it's going to fail at some point, because that's what gets you over into explosive growth for your organization, because that's how you're bringing in large amounts of money quickly. And organizations that embrace creative services and embrace a creative mindset within their entity and their brand and their business really go further faster. So that's going to be like my appeal to an audience is, if you're connected to an organization that is trying to move to the next level, or if you're trying to figure out why your business is spinning its wheels, you know, look at the health of the creative team within that organization. That's going to be a bit of a canary in the coal mine. Is that creative team trusted? Is that creative team getting resources to do research? When they present an advertising campaign, are they capable of moving that campaign forward based off of their research? Or is that getting tinkered with? Is that getting ignored? If the organization doesn't have trust for the creatives, that's something that you can go back in there and you can start to work with that leadership and that upper level stakeholder class, and remind them that you're hiring experts, you're bringing people in that are supposed to unleash the potential of your business. And you do want to let the artists and the designers deliver on the skills and ultimately make money. And that's where I ran out. So thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer a lot.
Oh, Charles, that was so good. And yes, I have 55 questions. Can I ask two?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I've heard this. What's the deal about asking 5 people in your market research instead of asking 100 people as it used to be? Now the new thing is to ask 5 only.
That's a good one. I still like quantity in when you're doing market research, because you're always going to find a lot of different points of view. But I think really when people are talking about focus on 5 people, is that there's you know, you can't boil an ocean. You know, you need to concentrate and create boundaries on some level for who you're trying to reach as an audience and who you're trying to talk to as a business. So I think when they're talking about bringing you down to 5, it's a way to clarify for the entrepreneur or the young business that at the end of the day, you want to talk to the people that are so tightly aligned to what you're doing. And if you know those people, you really only need to talk to 5 of them. You don't need to talk to that many if you're laser focused about who you understand as your audience.
So they're tightly aligned. Thank you.
Yeah.
And my second thing, it goes back to what you were saying in the very first 5 minutes of your speech about the experience in coffee shops. What happened to Starbucks? I mean, when I remember them in New York City, the big thing was going in, taking your time, sitting in a big comfy chair, talking on the phone. And now it's all get in, get out, and no place to sit.
I would bet they did market research and found out that most of their people get in and get out. And so if that's what a large enough revenue-driven part of your audience does, I mean, that's the business mindset. We're going to do 100% of that. You know, I love entertainment. I love creativity and media-centric stuff. You see this about movies all the time. Why isn't a movie more intellectually stimulating? Well, because it doesn't sell tickets. You know, the stuff that is broader based and a little bit simpler that gives you an entertainment ride at the end of the day, that's what the data is suggesting sells tickets. Not necessarily creates a better experience for the theater goer, but opens the wallet and gets the money out. And a lot of this advertising stuff, the cynical side of it is our job is done the moment somebody runs the transaction at the point of sale. If they enjoy the product or not, that's almost secondary. because the return customer experience is different from the first customer experience. So then we can kind of like absolve ourselves of a little bit of responsibility if you had a good time with the product or not. You know, there's a whole thing about customer retention and customer experience that goes into advertising. But if you're just doing the very entry level stuff, I only care if I got you to open your wallet. Just cynical, but kind of true.
Charles, you've probably been involved with numerous campaigns over the years. What's one where you thought I've brought maximum creativity to this campaign, and it was what I brought to it that made the difference in it being really appealing and something that you're proud of?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've worked with a lot of different organizations over the years. And my career spans about 10 years in a couple different cities. And for the last 8, I was in Austin, Texas, and I really enjoyed that city. And one of my favorite organizations that I worked with down there was the Tech Convergence Conference, South by Southwest. So I was on the post-production media team for South by Southwest as a senior freelancer for 5 or 6 years. And the way that that type of work would happen was organized chaos, to be kind of friendly about it. So there's a lot of different things happening at once. There's maybe 15 to 20 videographers that are running all over the city capturing work. There's a loose framework Bible of kind of expected results that are largely metric driven. We need to turn out X videos a day of a certain length. We need to capture so many conference pieces. But within that, we're also paying a lot of attention to what is video performance looking like on YouTube? Are sponsors happy with how their brands are being represented? Is something like unique and unusual happening out in the city aligned to South by Southwest that wasn't on anybody's radar that needs to get prioritized? So what I really loved about that environment of organized chaos was that the place where good ideas came from to fill these gigantic obligations was very flat. Anybody could come up with a really good idea. And that would mean that somebody would be able to look at some of the footage that came out for the day and go, oh, I'm seeing like all these clips of this weird, unusual theme, like people wearing the same type of sunglasses or yellow shirts. Let's do a silly little video using the South by Southwest branding and put that out. We would like to often look at different conferences that were happening, and we would see that speakers would have similar kind of topical themes that would show up. So we'd be like, oh, we noticed the pattern here. Let's do a highlight reel of all those. Or there's a band that's coming in town. Let's run out and do a specific interview with them. So there was the seat of the pants way of developing ideas that I just absolutely loved. And I haven't seen that repeated anywhere else. But in my mind, you know, you don't want to be as freewheeling and as loose as South by was, but that ability for anybody to come in and go, I've made an observation about what we're doing. I think this would be a really cool idea. And there's just enough people going, yeah, let's try it. Maybe it doesn't work, but in the grand scheme, it's okay if there's a couple duds alongside all of these successes. So I love that type of improvisation that comes up inside of things.
Yeah, it sounds like you've redefined creativity in a way. I mean, market research used to be focus group driven very often, and now it's moved to the internet. One of my sons worked for a company that used algorithms to find out what people thought of and how people were actually using a client's products. And sometimes the user groups were very different, completely unknown to the manufacturer.
Yeah, yes. One of the, I work with, on a freelance basis, a communications agency out of New York. And for a long time, they had been attached to Better Than Bouillon as a foodstuff product. Better Than Bouillon in Louisiana hot sauce that you could buy in your grocery store. So I'd work on the Better Than Bouillon advertising commercial campaigns in an early phase of the process. And it would be roughly 50 script ideas that were distilled down to 9 that would go into audience testing. And we would always pick our favorites among the 9 that would go into audience testing. We were always wrong. And that was one of the big lessons that I've always taken away from is what you think and what you like as a skilled contextual person. Like, I get the context of this product. I have extra information about it. Almost guarantees I'm going to be misaligned with the customer. So even today, when you are with places that have the money, it's still great to do that market-driven research and hiring experts to deliver on it, because it's going to give you the best data. A lot of people don't spend money that way, or they don't have the budget for it. So the other side is trying to experiment as much as possible, and then seeing if, when I put something out into the world, are people responding to that? No? Well, let's try a different appeal instead. Does that work? Great. Well, we'll do more of that. Oh, well, it doesn't work so much. So then you have this kind of organic response that comes from social media that can be not as valuable as market research, but kind of works as a facsimile or an adjacent method to it.
Yeah, Charles, I'll start out with a statement of disclosure. I am retired from Ford Motor Company, where I worked 24 years in public relations.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, it was. Our agency at the time, J. Walter Thompson, used to say that Ford was one of the 3 most powerful brands on the planet. Multinational companies, Ford Motor Company, McDonald's, and Coca-Cola. I don't know if that's still true today, but it's got to be, they've got to be up there. But in your opinion, what are the differences in your field for working with an established brand like Ford Motor Company, and perhaps working with a startup like Tesla on the EV side, clean sheet approach, or BYD in China on the EV side?
I know a little bit more about the stuff in grocery stores than cars, but and app startups. But as far as working with really established brands, Better Than Bouillon and Louisiana Hot Sauce and South by Southwest are some of my best examples. There is already a framework in place, and that if you're coming in as a really like I love bringing a creative voice in, and I love kind of like filling as much space and as much latitude as an organization will give me. Like I'll take all of it. And with the more established, bigger organizations where there's more, there's just the stakes are higher. There's more on the line. They've already solved a lot of their process. They've already learned a lot. I'm not going to go into Better Than Bouillon and explain to them how to do market research or what their customer is. They already know all of that. And in those types of roles and environments, I'm coming in and I'm working on the project that's right in front of me. And with the Better Than Bouillon commercials that I was working on, I would look at the ad, the 30-second piece that's right in front of me, and my suggestions might become very, very small. It might be a matter of, oh, the timing from this scene to this scene doesn't feel right, or we need to rework. Would it be cool if this line of dialogue was reworked because it doesn't sound right after I've listened to the edit multiple times? So that's a very small kind of incremental change. And then when I get a chance to work with a much smaller or younger organization that's in a startup space or is semi-mature, they're in the growth period, you get a lot more latitude to come in and go, okay, I think I've got an idea for like a video campaign on Facebook. And now we're talking about a bigger chunk of the process. And if you're talking with somebody who's really young, maybe a founder who's just building their business, now we're talking almost at like 1,000 feet up, we're talking conceptually, like, what does it mean to have a marketing plan for your organization? Are you going to be focused on social media? Are you going to be doing trade events? Are you going to be trying to get yourself to a place where you're doing a Super Bowl ad? Whatever strategy that might be. So as a business grows and matures, it seems to become there's more stasis in it. And I don't mean that in a bad way so much as they've solved a lot of their unknowns already. And then as the creative person, you have to respect that those problems have been solved versus a younger organization where they're still figuring it out.
Thank you, Charles. I'll be thinking about this through the night tonight. Very helpful. When you talked about going further fast, the word that came to mind, especially after hearing Judy, was the word blitzkrieg. And I find myself wondering about the speed of disinformation and propaganda and gaslighting. And that relates to marketing around things like, how do you sell vaccines? What are your thoughts about the abuses of getting further fast?
Oh, geez. It's a big, complicated problem is kind of the short answer. Advertising is one of those places where I've been in rooms where people explore less than ethical decisions. That happens a lot because we're trying to extract money from people. Whether we value what our business is bringing into the world, or we see it as a way to just personally enrich ourselves and the employees, we're compelling individuals to open up their hard-earned cash and provide that to the organization. And not everybody has the same amount of money, and not every financial decision is weighted the same. And it's very, very easy to start to fall into that trap of we're going to emotionally leverage the consumer to make them spend money. Wouldn't your life be better if you had this? Don't you feel bad when you don't own this status product? That stuff gets really complicated. And we haven't even talked about political ads. I have been in spaces where speaking truth is not the most accurate thing to communicate, or the most important thing to communicate. And I don't stay in those organizations long. It makes me uncomfortable. But I think there's a lot of businesses out there that just don't care about telling the truth and don't care about respecting the consumer. And as it gets easier to enter into starting a business, this is a byproduct of it, because more and more people want to enter into entrepreneurship that don't necessarily go through structured education programs or come from social groups or other spaces that encourage and create a culture of economic balance, I guess we might say. And there's a lot of people that are going to go out and they're going to fundraise off of an idea that can't actually be made into an effective app. And they're going to bring in a bunch of money. They're going to give themselves a big salary, and then they're going to exit before they're accountable for those choices. Move fast and break things breaks things. It's in the phrase. As I've gotten older, I really like kind of countering that with like move slow and build things. I don't know if it's caught on yet, but I do think that I think there's a consequence to moving fast. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow, another home run by the program committee, Michael and Jillian. Thank you. And Charles, for your efforts here today, in honor of your presentation, we are making a contribution to Stonebelt. And we appreciate that. We figure that's a lot better than a coffee cup or something like that that says Rotary on. I want to give some special acknowledgments for people who made today's meeting successful beyond the program committee. Our greeter, Phil Amerson, and Charlotte for introductions with the help of Tracy, and our Zoom host, Joy Harder, our wonderful reflection, Judy Schroeder, and camera and mic operator, Tracy Jadovich, and obviously Tyler, as we produce this and overcome some of the technical issues quickly. So you did a great job on that. We have another exciting meeting next week. We have Chris Herring from PALS Ed to speak on healing with horses. That'll be interesting. So those who need healing, stay tuned. It'll be kind of fun. Tyler, if you would bring up the four-way test, we'll stand and say the four-way test together. The four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And fifth, is it fun? Have a great week.